Over the years, the Trails of Cold Steel series from developer Falcom has grown into a beloved RPG saga globally. With The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 4, we finally have the eagerly awaited conclusion to this giant arc. Cold Steel 4 is a fun game to play, but ultimately, story is paramount. While it does a good job of wrapping things up, it continues the worst habits of Cold Steel in general. Before we get started, due to the nature of the series, Trails of Cold Steel 4 contains spoilers from the previous entries of Cold Steel games and some Trails games that haven't been released in the West. Please keep this in mind while watching to avoid potential spoilers. To get us started with the easy stuff, those who played Trails of Cold Steel 3 will notice that many of the visuals in Trails of Cold Steel 4 have remained unchanged. Falcom titles have never been graphically groundbreaking, as they tend to focus more on storytelling, character development, and world building, and Cold Steel 4 is no different in this front. The visuals of Cold Steel 4 are not going to blow anyone away, but it does look legitimately good, and not just good for a Falcom game. Music is an area where Falcom traditionally excels at, but Cold Steel 4 is a downgrade from the great scores one might expect. While there still are tracks that might emotionally move you, I felt mostly disappointed as some tracks like Geofront came off as downgrades from previous entries. And I'm not the only one with the sentiment. Mention Singa around a fan and you'll hear the same thing. Cold Steel 4's core gameplay loop has 4 stages: story-driven dungeons, open-ended quests, minigames, and bonding scenes. The length of this gameplay loop has been perfected to the point in which you can easily find yourself continuously playing even if you didn't intend to. The minigames Vantage Master and a Puyo clone called Pom Pom Party are a big reason why, since both offer a nice break from the mission at hand and are genuinely fun. Quests are an essential part of any Trails adventure as they allow characters in the world to be fleshed out through additional dialogue. In Cold Steel 4's gameplay loop, the bonding scenes are just story, but can serve as a more lighthearted relief from the dense main story or add flavor like quests do. Ultimately though, Cold Steel is all about the story, and with Cold Steel 4 being the conclusion of an arc, one's opinion on its narrative will determine their thoughts on the game. Thankfully, Cold Steel 4 contains many of the best elements that the Trails series has to offer. Unlike other series, the world building in Trails feels like a living and breathing world thanks to the amount of character and depth that Cold Steel provides. As the climax rises, the tone is handled well. We get a real sense of impending doom, and the tone significantly uplifts the game. If you're a fan of Cold Steel, you'll be happy to know that the game's conclusion ties up everything nicely with a satisfying end while leaving enough open for the later games. At the core of Trails of Cold Steel is a grand epic that weaves parts of previous entries into one legendary, massive story revolving around the country Erebronia and the main character Rean. If you played the earlier Trails titles, it's incredibly rewarding to see. Cold Steel 4 adds depth to the world of Zemuria and Spades to be engaging and compelling. It's also great to see your favorite characters throughout Trails play a role in Cold Steel 4, though it can feel like pure fan service at times. In each of the previous arcs, Trails was more focused on individual characters and specific themes, but with Trails of Cold Steel, we got a story focused on the magical Septarians and the mysterious Ouroboros. When Cold Steel 4 is at its best, it evokes a feeling of grandeur, nailing the feeling of being in a classic by rooting its fantasy and its world's history. Also, the characters in its story legitimately feel like incredibly important people whose decisions will have a lasting impact on their reality. However, even though Cold Steel 4 has massive ambitions, it also fails to resolve the series' most prominent issues. Sadly, the pacing comes to a crawl. No, it's not as bad as Cold Steel 2, but it is pretty bad. And to add to that, the character build is ridiculous. There's also a large focus on the harem elements, and the primary themes are less significant here. Cold Steel 4 picks up right after the cliffhanger of Cold Steel 3 and hits the ground running, dealing with the fallout and ramifications of the ending of Cold Steel 3, piecing together the gang up again, building up morale. These make for a very compelling opening segment. The new Class 7 gains great chemistry and grows leaps and bounds. In particular, Yuna benefits most in this segment of the game, having the courage to act and make decisions in a way that she could have never had before this. I also appreciated the growth of Kurt in the early moments as he became less of a stoic, depressed sword boy and more of someone who's introspective and caring. However, after the first major section of the game's pacing grinds to a halt, and you're left with what feels like more padding. As the plot juggles the story moments, it pours time into random plot points in an attempt to justify how epic its narrative is. You are sent on these remedial tasks that can be boiled down to find a character, and these end up taking tens of hours of your time and barely moves the story in any significant way. Even with the high speed mode on, it felt like these unnecessary plot points took up about half of my 70 hours of playtime. Another issue comes from Cold Steel 4 feeling more like a direct sequel to Cold Steel 3, treating the first two entries as a mere afterthought as they don't really impact the story in any significant way. Exacerbating this feeling, Cold Steel 4 attempts to bring the characters in for the sake of bringing in characters. This mostly affects the old Class 7, who play basically no significant role in the narrative but are just hanging out. This is contrasted with the new Class 7, who receive all the character development along with characters from Trails in the Sky and Crossbell. There are somewhere around 40 playable characters, which is often the reason the story loses focus. There's just so much going on, and that's not even considering the long list of NPCs to interact with. While individual characters are great, Cold Steel 4 does a bad job of highlighting what makes these characters unique, which hurts their overall appeal for most of the game. Sadly, when characters are in group settings, Falcom chooses to boil down their characters to simple archetypes to play plot points, instead of having actual depth. Having the females in particular being a damsel in distress or a harem member gets very old, as these harem themes play very prominently in this game. While having these elements aren't inherently a bad thing, they are incredibly out of place in Trails, and nothing comes out of them. It only serves a distraction from the main plot. The biggest problem for me with Cold Steel's story is how it lacks a clear focus or theme, instead pushing a childish black or white morality that's never justified by anything. Much of Cold Steel is focused on finding a third way, and on face value this is a message worth sharing. Unfortunately, this third way ends up being nothing more than beat the bad guy. When contrasted by other works in the Trail series, which has historically handled themes and tragedy so well, it's frustrating to see this good versus bad morality. It has a direct impact on the quality of writing, and it has a considerable impact on the way the characters speak, and the focus on the story itself, leading to many scenes that feel forced or awkward, leaving the game feeling a little bit empty at the end.
このパターンの派生形を数千通り検討。仮確定。別パターンとの弁証法的な統合。
Overall though, The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 4 is an epic conclusion to the series, but it has enough issues that I'm partially glad it's over. There are many reasons to play through Cold Steel 4, from an engaging gameplay loop to an epic story, and it's a satisfying conclusion that works in many of the best storylines and mechanics that the series has to offer. Unfortunately, it comes at the cost of a lot of filler leading to the climax, a lack of focus, a massive cast of characters with nothing to do, and a lack of a compelling theme. Noisy Pixel gives Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 4 an 8 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This has been Noisy Pixel, signing off. If you're interested in more information about this game, please check out the Noisy Pixel website where we have news and a more in-depth written review. If you're interested in content like this, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be notified about our future content, and have a great day.